Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great time.
It is. All right. So we're moving on to our next session here. And then after that session, we will have a break. But this next one deals with time of use and demand side management. And with us, we have Tim Nelson from Evergy, Laura Baker from Boone Electric Cooperative, and Andrew Petri from Boone Electric Cooperative. So if you'd like to come up here and join me, we'll go ahead and have you get started. So please welcome Tim, Laura, and Andrew. Tim, we have you going up first. Is that all right?
You bet.
Fantastic.
Hi, Tim Nelson, Evergy. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide, happy to be here today. I didn't know who was going to be in the audience and how familiar you are with Evergy, but just as a reminder, Evergy what is composed of two former utilities that merged in 2018. Westar Energy, which is the green shaded area up there, now called Evergy Kansas Central. And then the Kansas City Power and Light, or KCP&L territories, which are the blue and the orange territories. The blue is Evergy Metro, which resides on both sides of the state lines. And then the I think it's orange, is the Evergy Missouri West territory. Go ahead, next slide, please. And okay, go ahead and the next one. So for time of use rates, if you live somewhere here in the Midwest, you may have seen news that Evergy's service territories in Missouri are now shifting to time of use rates. And so just maybe a little bit of a quick background on that, and then I'll give a brief description of the time of use rates that are going into effect. But in the last rate case, Evergy proposed to have optional time of use rates, and we had a pilot time of use rate for some time, but we were proposing some new additional time of use rates to be optional rates. The commission, as they evaluated these rates, viewed them as being very important and was very interested in having the price signal that comes from a time of use rate being given to the customers so that they are able to make decisions that are more in line with when the cost of electricity is high. And so the commission actually ended up ordering that the time use rate be the default rate. And there are also three other rates that are optional, but the existing standard rate is going away. That order came out end of last year. Customers since the beginning of the year have been able to sign up for these on an optional basis, but here this fall, the customers will be defaulting to the new default rate unless they otherwise choose one of the other three rates. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And just as a quick description of what these rates look like now, the new default rate is called our standard peak saver. It is a two-part time use rate with approximately a 4x differential between the on-peak and the off-peak price. Like I said, that's the standard or default rate. If a customer is able to choose the other rates, but if they don't choose, then they would get put on that one. The peak reward saver, the bottom left, that orange circle, that is most closely related to the existing rates. There is a declining block, as well as there is a peak adder for the on-peak period of about 1 penny, and then an off-peak decrement of also 1 penny. So it's sort of a hybrid between sort of the old rates and a time use rate, but it's got a much lower differential. The final two rates, the nights and weekend saver and the nights and weekends max saver, are both three-part time use rates. The big difference between those two is the differential between the on-peak and the off-peak. The max saver has a higher differential. Really, the main difference between those two The on-peak price is not significantly different, but the off-peak price is significantly different. So in the max saver, a customer, there's too many different numbers in there, but the off-peak price in that one is approximately 3 cents. So very attractive for a customer, for example, that might have an electric vehicle. Beyond that rate, you can charge your car for a very, very cheap price. And so those are what the default rates are. As a part of this also, the company has provided a tool for our customers if they log into their account. We've run an analysis for every customer's account of what their actual usage is in the past 12 months. And we've shown them what their bill would have looked like on all 4 rates so that they can make a better informed decision. And that, of course, though, is based on their historical usage without any kind of load shifting or behavioral change. So, but it's still, the idea is to give them an idea of what those rates look like, since they are very different from what our historical rates are. And of course, our company is as well doing lots of educational things, billboards, emails, customer flyers, and many other things to help educate our customers on these rates. And go ahead and go to the next slide. So the question is, what does this mean for our demand side programs? As you saw this earlier this morning, we talked about what we've done over the last 10 years with our MEA programs. Well, I would argue that we still have lots of opportunity to do demand side programs. And in effect, we actually have an opportunity to get savings that was not there before, but the current demand side programs still really have the same value that they did before. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so what about cost effectiveness? Well, the primary test that we use is the total resource cost test. And that test uses the utility costs as its avoided energy costs and avoided capacity costs. So from the primary cost effectiveness test perspective, nothing really changes with our time and use rates. All the old demand side programs still really have the same value that they did before. But what does the time and use rate do? Well, it actually creates new opportunities for additional peak demand savings if a customer shifts their usage to a different time period, which I was really interested in hearing the flexible load management discussion earlier, because that's exactly the kind of thing that is one of the new opportunities from time of use rates. Next slide, please. But what about from the customer's perspective? Well, it's really kind of the same thing. From an energy basis, as far as like the old demand side programs, yes, they have these new pricing, and the pricing changes by hour. But when we develop new rates like time of use rates, one of the metrics we actually use is called revenue neutrality, which means we're still recovering the same number of dollars from our customer group, from that class, as we were before on the old rates. So on an average basis, the customer's still paying the same amount on the time use rates, but now they have the additional opportunity, in addition to traditional demand side programs, which is just about saving energy. Now they also have these new opportunities to change their usage and load profiles and shift their usage to different periods. Now, at first, many customers think that sounds confusing and hard and impossible. Next slide, please. But of course, there are a few things that we can do. And this is a slide that our marketing group likes to use when having community presentations. So for example, delaying your dishwasher. This is probably something everybody in this room knows, but I have a dishwasher. It has a delay function, but until recently, I was not on a time of use rate. So I've never used it, right? I mean, why would I? There was no benefit to me. Well, now with a time of use rate, there is a benefit to me. And this is a really good example of one that, you know, it's really easy to do. And there's really no reason I wouldn't do it if I would also save some money. And obviously there's other things that customers can do. And these are the things that we can help educate our customers on. And these things right here are focused on residential customers, of course, using your thermostat. We already have a demand response program where we have demand response events, but this now allows a customer to program their thermostat and maybe take advantage of additional savings on their own. And my last slide. And this is another slide that we use in some of our community programs just to help customers understand what some of their larger users of energy in their home are, just to kind of get them thinking about what is worthwhile, or where should they be looking first. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura Baker with Boone Electric Cooperative. I'm the manager of member services there. Been there about 23 years now. So I just wanted to again share some things about Boone Electric. If you're not familiar, we are member owned. We're owned by those we serve. We have about 28,000 members that use 35,000 meters. So some members have multiple meters. We are a 3-tiered system. So we have our generation cooperative, our transmission cooperative, and then the distribution cooperatives. We are one of 51 distribution cooperatives in the state. We are governed by a 9-member board, and we're independently operated from all the other distribution cooperatives in the state as well. We are member driven as well. So our EV rate came from member requests versus coming from our GNT. And we have other programs that help with our load, like prepaid billing, budget billing, load control, and then our EV rate as well. Next slide, please. So we worked with our lender to start the process of developing our rate. We did a cost of service study. So our lender is CFC, the National Rural Utilities Cooperative Finance Corporation. We looked at our advanced metering infrastructure hourly data. So we couldn't even look into this until that was fully deployed, which was in 2019. Is that correct? Ish. Our Form 7 and related financial reports. So we looked at that, like we talked about, looking at what's coming in and what's going out as far as rates. Looked at our power bills and then our billing reports as well. So we looked at our residential load, again, after the AMI was deployed over the full year, and this is full residential load for every hour over the course of 365 days. So you can see that the peak is during the summer months in the evenings. So the hour time frame is that 5 to 9 p.m., and it's during the summer mostly. We in Columbia have a lot of gas heat option available for our members. And so we are a summer peaking system. Next slide, please. So as we talk about developing that rate and comparing it to our standard residential rate, you can see where our residential base scenario is with using about 1,100 kilowatt hours is our average usage for our members. Then the bill would be about $120 with the current rate structure. With the base EV rate scenario, it'd be about $180. And then if 5% of the on-peak load switches to super off-peak, then it would go down a little bit. And then again, if 10% switched, then it would go down a little bit as well. So what we included in this research was a member engagement opportunity and the ability to be an expert in this area as far as, you know, when to use what items and that kind of thing. And then my slide got a little funky there. Sorry. So member satisfaction, again, we are member driven. So this was something that our members wanted to benefit from. If they had an EV, what would encourage them to charge off peak? That would be a benefit for both the co-op and for the member as well. Encouraging technology adoption, EVs are becoming more part of our infrastructure. So we want to encourage that growth as well. And then we want it to be a financial benefit for the members and the co-op together. I think there's more to that, maybe. There we go. So again, looking overall at education, policy and practices, technology, it does take time to fully develop. It allows us to meet multiple objectives. There's no single solution, and there's several co-op specific variables to consider. And again, over time, as we learn things, we can change it. This rate structure wasn't going to be ironclad. We could separate it into weekends and different peaks during the day as well. But what we started out with was 3 different peaks during the daily period, and that's 24/7. Next slide, please. And so we named it our Evolve program. So our Evolve program better aligns with incurred costs with the system usage, provides incentive for customers to control when and how they use electricity to find savings. It's a 4-to-1 price differential from the on-peak to the super off-peak. And what we tell our members when trying to explain this is that for 20 of the 24 hours a day, it is lower than the standard residential rate. So if you can control your usage during those 4 hours of the day, then you're going to save money. Member subscribers will be eligible for a $250 rebate towards a 240-volt level 2 home charger. So if they do get the rebate, they are required to take this rate for at least a year, but it is eligible for members who don't have an EV as well. Where members are encouraged to use the Smart Hub app to monitor their home energy usage, which I have this rate as well. I do not have an EV, but I can see on the app the 3 different rates and how I'm using them during the day, and then what my bill is going to look like. And then CFC, sorry, that's fine. CFC is working closely with Boone to ensure this program is successful. They want us to encourage this as well, so they want it to be a success for us. So you all are aware of the different level of EV charging programs. We really focus on the residential for this program, but we do offer commercial EV rebates, charging rebates as well. So for the focus on the marketing piece and how we promoted this to our members, we do have an electric vehicle page linked on our website from our Generation Cooperative, which is Associated Electric in Springfield. So you can take a look at that if you want and see what we have showing on our website. I explained the EV rate with the charger rebate. We have a $250 rebated as a bill credit for our members. And then we also had a wrap contest for our corporate EV. And so we did a contest on social media. We had our members vote, and then they picked the one that we actually wrapped it with. Next slide. So this is the piece on our website. You can see different models. You can see our Evolve rate program, any other facts and incentives and tax credits that are available to our members. So this is our graphic that we use to explain how the 3 rates work. We have our super off peak, which is 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so you can see that's where you want to use your larger electric use items. The EV, the dishwasher, like you said, I didn't use that little delay button either until I came on this rate. So it's very helpful. Clothes dryer as well. So we really encourage those use items on that super off peak rate. And then we have our standard off peak, which is from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. And so some of those other use items, the washer, they don't use as much. Again, it's lower than our standard rate. So there's still some savings benefits there for those items as well. And then during the peak hours, it's going to be a little harder. You want to adjust your thermostat. So that's from 5 to 9 p.m. And again, this is 24/7. So it's 7 days a week. Right now, we don't have holidays or weekends, but that's something that could change over time as we get more engagement with this rate. So yeah, it's wanting to use the crock pots instead of your stove, that kind of thing. So talked about our rebate. This is a pass-through rebate. We are given $250 for an EV charger from our generation cooperative. So we pass it on to the member when they are eligible. This was part of our wrap contest. So these were the 4 different options. The final one picked was the top left, and we would have it with us today, but somebody else is using it. So, but if you see it around town, then that's our EV, and that was picked out by our members. So next slide. Some other marketing we did for it was highlight our members who had EVs. And we have an EVIQ commercial. I don't know if anybody's seen it around here, but so we did highlight some of our members who have EVs. And I'll turn it over to Andrew.
All right, congratulations. We're coming up against a break. It's after lunch and you guys get stuck with the engineer. So I'll apologize ahead of time, but I'll do my best to keep you somewhat engaged. Some of the things I want to talk about today, what our typical peaks look like, and really what Tim's talked to, what Laura's talked to, and what impact that has on the engineering side of things, and what that looks like for us on our load graphs as I look at planning, system design. Additionally, I wanted to talk to some of the other comments or some of the other systems that we have in place even prior to our evolve rate, which is some of our traditional load control programs. And then, of course, just some graphics as far as what things look like here just recently with the summer that we've had. So if you can go to the next slide. And before I really get into this a whole lot, Laura did mention that we've got about 35,000 meters that are out there. Approximately 75% of those are, 95% of those are residential class meters. 75% of but only 75% of our usage comes from that residential class. With us being where we're at, we serve primarily here in Boone County, Randolph, Audrain, 1 or 2 over in Howard and Callaway, but for the most of it, it's here in Boone County. And with our territory agreements with the city, we serve a good portion of the areas around the city, and so we're not your typical rural electric cooperative. We do have a lot of subdivisions, and we do have a lot more urban load than what you may see with some of your other more traditional rural electric cooperatives. So what we've got here and is two different charts, 2 different waveforms. And what we're looking at is our traditional load profile for summer and for winter. As you can see with the blue line that's up there, that is our traditional winter loading peak. As people are getting up in the morning, you can see your first opportunity for setting a peak in the wintertime. That's as people are getting up, turning on their heats, cooking breakfast, hot water heaters are going. And as they go to work, they get away from their homes, that load traditionally falls off. But then as soon as they start coming back, there in the evening around dinner time, you see that second opportunity for a peak. On the summertime, what we traditionally see is mornings are fairly low key, nothing significant. But as the system builds throughout the day with air conditioning, just trying to keep up, and people coming home, all that converging together at the end of the day is whenever we start looking at when we're looking at system peaks. One comment that Laura made is that we're classified as a summer peaking system. The technical part to that is, yeah, some years we are, but there are also plenty of other years where we are also a winter peaking system. So this is just from this past year. You can see that there in that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock time frame, both of our peaks they're literally neck and neck. And so from a design standpoint, I have to be able to, and the system behaves very, very differently, across different parts of the system versus the rural areas, the urban areas. And so we have to be able to design a system that can handle both types of peaks and different loading across different substations, different feeders. The one thing that sticks out with the evolve rate and why we wanted to focus on that evening peak more so was people are more likely to come home, plug in their vehicles when they get home for dinner. That's when they're plugging in their vehicles. They're not waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning to go plug in their vehicles to try and charge and, you know, be on our morning peaks. So with our evolve rate being more, not just a traditional TOU rate, it genuinely is an EV rate that we were targeting that market, and really hoping to try and help out that membership. What you see also on this particular graph are the different colors, and those colors represent what Laura had spoken to earlier, which is your green areas represent your super off peak timeframes. Your yellow shaded area is your regular off peak, and your red, of course, is your on peak timeframes. Go ahead and go to the next slide, if you would, please. And so, what are some of the systems that we've got in place that we can have an impact on those peaks? So back in the late 90s, Boone Electric Cooperative worked with our transmission and generation providers to install a load control program. And again, this was a totally opt-in voluntary program to where that we provided load control switches, we provided some hot water heaters, air-to-air heat pumps, rebates and whatnot. And what that allowed for us to do then was we provide them with that equipment with the understanding that we would be able to operate some of those and curtail some of that operation as we were getting into peak scenarios. And so to this day, that a portion of that system is still up and functional, surprisingly, believe it or not. But my department will work on paying attention to weather, paying attention to heating, loading, and whatnot, and we will issue curtailments for the system for these devices that have been traditionally voluntarily rolled out by the membership. Additionally, what we have are interruptible rates. We have some on the commercial side of things, we have some on the irrigation side of things, where we offer a reduced demand charge, reduced usage charge for the members in exchange for curtailment during peak times of operations. All this stuff is great as long as it works. As long as my department's paying attention to the weather, as long as members who are involved in and engaged in their bills and paying attention to what's going on with the evolve rates, and they're adjusting their behaviors so that we can see those system impacts. So if we roll on to the next slide here, I'm not trying to scare you with this. This is simply just a general load curve. This is from just July 27th of this past year. So this is generally what our load looked like directly from my SCADA system. We've got a red line that's up there, and we've got a white line. Ignore the red line. We do have some additional loads that we tend to track separately. But this particular day, if you look, we've got the two green lines that are up there on the graph, and that's what we consider to be our peak time frame. And the next slide, we'll get into a little bit more detail here. But that is the time frame that we actually called for load control. What we still see to this day is, when we first initiated that load control at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we saw approximately a 1.7 megawatt load drop. For my system, when we're peaking around 150 megawatts, and to have a system out there in place that's interruptible rates and low control devices for hot water heaters, where we're not necessarily guaranteed that the stuff is going to be shut off, but more or less it's just coming from the standpoint of it's just not allowed to come on. So to see a drop of 1.7 megawatts for load control and evolve rates, Boone is content with that. And what you continue to see throughout the day, due to the cyclic nature of how we operate our load control, you see these continual drops throughout the time over that 4-hour time frame to try and minimize what we're seeing on the peak side of things. So if we go to the next slide. So in preparation for this presentation, I wanted to say, okay, all right, let's look, we know what the system looks like at an overall level, but we want to do a deeper dive into our evolve rate versus our traditional usage rates for residential meters. And so the orange line that you see up there are our traditional meters. And I'll be honest, I cheated. I didn't use our entire data set. I used approximately 25% of our meters for one of our cycles. We've got basically 4 different billing cycles that we use. This is every single residential meter within that billing cycle, on average, what their hourly average usage was for a given 24-hour period. Just so happens to be the same day that I pulled the other The other charge from, which was July 27th. The blue line, as you may guess, is our evolve rate meters. Every single meter that is involved in that program, this was their average usage for that same day, same time period. And I don't think it takes too much of a rocket science to realize that there are across the board folks involved in that evolve rate that are actively curtailing and adjusting their behaviors based on the pricing incentives that we have put out there for them. And again, this is an entirely opt-in program that our membership is taking part in. And so I was really surprised to see that I was pleasantly surprised to see that there was actually an impact to our rates, or not to our rates, I'm sorry, to our loading curve for that. Now, that being said, when you look at, the number of people that we have engaged in that Evolve program, there's not a substantial amount at this point in time. There's about 160 or so that are currently engaged in that. And out of 35,000 meters, obviously we'd like to see a little bit more infiltration with that, but there is certainly opportunity there. All right, there's an opportunity for us to flatten out our load curve, which helps our entire membership. And so this last curve, this last picture, and I'm sorry, last one here, you can see that, the residential, the orange curve is our traditional residential members. The gray curve, obviously a different a different loading scale on the right-hand side. They are very similar in nature and their characteristics and when the peaks occur and how the system behaves, as opposed to the evolve rate. And of course, highlight there the 1 hour that we actually peaked that particular day. You can see right as we come into that peak time frame, across the board, our evolve rate members did reduce their consumption. And it's not even so much that it's not an increase, it's the fact that there is actually a decrease, because those are two very different things and two different behaviors. So with that, I've shared all I've got. I hope we made it through. With that, we'll entertain questions.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring it to you. All right.
Quick question for Andrew, and perhaps somebody could pull up the last slide. I'm curious why you were seeing a peak around 10, 11 o'clock at night on the individual customers that were engaged in your energy savings
So I'm
program.
gonna throw my coworker under the bus is
Okay.
honestly what I'm gonna do here. So that is the time frame where we transitioned from our on-peak rate to our super off-peak rate. And so when you have individuals such as, not mentioning names, Laura, who likes their house to be like a meat locker at night, they're cranking up their AC or they're cranking down their AC as soon as they're out of that on-peak period. Is that a fair statement? So as soon as they're out of that time frame, and the the delay that they were kind of speaking to earlier on the dishwasher, those devices that they're pushing out of that peak time period, that's exactly what you're seeing.
Any other questions? Yeah. And if we can take this off here and you guys can use it as you sit there. There you go, Tim. Jeff, 1 second.
Thanks for the presentations. Just had a quick question about Boone Electric. Is the co-op completely EMI?
Yes.
And approximately how many people or members have EVs?
I don't know the answer to that question. We've not required anybody who has EVs to go on this rate. It is an option with the charger rebate. I'm sorry, it is a requirement with the charger rebate, but if they've already had EVs, then we don't know that information. We try to push that out to them to encourage them that there are savings available, and especially, pushing that charging time off peak is very important to us, but we're trying to get the word out a little more each time that they would benefit as well.
Do you think you have a sense at all based off of your AMI data of members that do have EVs?
That would take a substantial amount of effort that we do not have the ability to do at this
Okay.
point in time.
All right, thanks.
Jeff. All right, here we go.
This question will be a lot simpler than before. Well, I have two. One is really simple. On your comparison of billing scenarios, was that like the same behavior in both scenarios? So if they didn't change their behavior, they would actually see maybe slight reduction in their bill?
I think that was compared with the current tariff and the proposal. Yes. So they would see more savings if they reduced only by 10%, I think was the number, to the off-peak time. So yes, the rate structure is not that much different than the standard rate right now, especially at the off-peak. The super off-peak is where it really drops. So I think it was showing that even just some minor changes with that off-peak time, you can still see savings.
My next question is, you talked a lot about people having appliances at home that can, you can delay the operation. I mean, I know I can do that with my washer and dryer and my dishwasher, and I have a smart thermostat, so I can do all of these great things, but not everybody has that. There are a lot of people who, are income eligible or income qualified, whatever term you choose. Any plans to help those individuals that may not be able to afford those higher end appliances or a smart thermostat to help them, meaningfully help their buildings? And of course, weatherization is also going to play a big role in their ability to coast through peak seat times with, AC, and still maintain safe, comfortable conditions.
From Boone's perspective, we also offer free energy audits to our members. So we can help them with some small changes. We obviously can't install HVAC, but we can help reduce the usage in their home. And again, in that education piece, without having those delayed appliances, I think there is still opportunity for them to save money if they can just make habit changes. Even with the dishwasher, I can still start it at 9 o'clock. I'm still awake. My washer and dryer is not programmed to do anything, so I have to manually, start the dryer at 9 p.m. So yes, there are opportunities for that as well. We do offer rebates for smart thermostats. We offer rebates for the dual fuel and the ground source heat pumps, although those are larger expense items on the front end. So we do offer rebates and again, free energy audits that we can do for members of any income level.
Any other questions? So I just had one, and I apologize, Tim. Again, this is for Boone Electric as well. But you guys are often one of the leading co-ops trying new and innovative things. What are your thoughts? Not that you can say what everyone else is going to do. How is the co-op community looking at this type of engagement with their members, this new formula policy? Anything you can share with us on that?
We really are independent of each other, so I don't know what their policy rates are for each other cooperative. I know we share information as far as what we're doing. I gave the same presentation to our, we call it a mid-state 8 group. So the cooperatives in the Howard, our local area around the Jeff City area. So I gave the same presentation. So they're looking at it. They're going to have to look independently on whether they can offer the same kind of things and probably work with the lender as well.
Oh, yes.
And it's for Boone. And I was curious if you all have documentation on the folks that are engaged in your Evolve program to know if you have renters from affordable multifamily properties in that program.
No, we don't have that information.
Okay.
All right. I don't have any other questions. We have a break coming up, so we can catch up a little bit more time there. I want to thank you all very much for presenting, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.